Hello and Happy New Year. My name is Laura Pinsonneault and I'm Director of the Office of Educational Accountability here at DPI. In last month's DPI Connections video, I talked with my colleague Jacob about value-added growth in the context of the state's educator effectiveness system. Value-added is one way to measure growth. The fact is there are a variety of ways to measure growth and for good reason. This is because we should use data in the way most appropriate to what we are trying to measure and to what purpose. So I'm going to talk briefly today about a few ways that we measure growth. I'll show you different growth reports available to Wisconsin educators and discuss ways that the different growth measures can be used appropriately. One important note before I continue is that some of the reports I'll show today are available only to school or district staff that are authorized to see secure student data. Secure data means it is never released to the public and it contains information that can identify individual students. Data like these are protected by law. For that reason, I've blacked out all personally identifiable information on the secure reports I'll show you today. So first, let's discuss a public report. Probably the most prominent use of student growth is in the school and district accountability report cards. When we were designing the state's new accountability system a few years ago, it was immediately clear that measuring and reporting on student growth was a key priority for everyone involved. This importance is reflected in that student growth is one of just 4 priority areas on the report cards. Wisconsin was one of just a handful of states recognized by a national education organization called the Education Commission of the States for our priority areas and for including student growth in those. In that priority area, we use a growth measure called a growth percentile. Because our accountability system is a points-based system, the calculation of the student growth priority area scores includes a conversion of growth percentiles into points. So what is a growth percentile? Well, let's take a look. In essence, a growth percentile is a way to categorize a student or group's growth based on prior performance. It groups a student based on his or her test score history, then looks at his or her growth in that context of how much students with similar test scores grew. The result is a growth percentile for the student. So a student with a growth percentile of 50 grew as much or more than 50% of the students with similar test score histories on the same test in the same years. A student with a growth percentile of 79 grew as much or more than 79% of students with similar test score histories. This is displayed nicely in student-level growth percentile reports. There's one example of that report on our DPI webpage, and that will be included in the resource guide accompanying this video. In this case, you see how much a student grew year to year, and you also see a trajectory of performance based on students a grade ahead that shows you where this student's performance may fall in the coming year. This display allows for conversations about actual performance as an example of how much a student might achieve in the coming year. The strength of growth percentiles is in the conversations they can elicit at an individual student level or with parents or other educators, but they can also be reported at a group level. At the group level, we report the median growth percentile. All the student growth percentiles for a group are listed in order, and the middle number is the median. For an example median growth percentile report, we're going to turn to WISE- for districts. So from the DPI homepage, WISE- for districts is a secure version of WISE-. So if we go to data and media, you can click on secure home for districts, and you'll see a landing page here. You would actually have to log in, but I've already done that. So if you click on WISE- here, it would take you to a WISE- landing page. I've already navigated ahead a little bit just to save some time. But on this tab under WISE-, you can select growth and you can pick a district. It would be your district likely, but you could choose a particular school in the district, grade levels, or particular race or ethnicity or disability status, different filters that you can see here. So for this particular district, we can look at the median growth percentile for the groups that are being displayed here. So we have a male-female comparison. We have median student growth percentiles by race or ethnicity. And the size of the bubble that you see is descriptive of the size of the group in question. So as you can see, the white student group is much larger than Asian or the other student groups. One of the really great aspects of WISE- for districts is that authorized users can actually drill down. And so you could drill to a list of students that comprise that particular bubble, if you will. And here we can see the list of students that comprise the group of the bubble that I selected. And you can actually even drill down to a student level if you're authorized by clicking on that icon. And here we see that individual student growth percentile report that I referenced from the DPI webpage. So we can see descriptors of this student's growth over time, as well as that trajectory of what kind of growth we might expect for different levels of performance. Another way to measure growth, as we discussed in last month's video, is a value-added model. This model, like growth percentiles, takes into account prior performance, but unlike growth percentiles, it also controls for student variables like race, ethnicity, English learner status, disability status, and economic status. Including those student characteristics in the calculation, the measure is designed to isolate the impact of an educator, a school, or a district. As such, value-added reports are more appropriate for program evaluation or making statements about the effectiveness of a school program or the like. So this distinguishes value-added reports from growth percentiles, which are used at a more granular level. So I'm going to take you to an example of a value-added report, and to do that, I'm going to go back to the secure homepage that I visited before, and we're going to go to the Secure Access File Exchange, also called SAFE. And we can select value-added reports here and select a district. And you can see that there's district-wide data available, district-level reports, and school-level reports. And if we open a school-level report, you'll see that it's a nice PDF that provides information about the data available, and then it also presents the actual growth score for reading and mathematics at the level indicated. So we see school level and grade level for both reading and mathematics. We can look by disability status, by economic status, and by English proficiency and gender as well for both content areas. And then there are actually comparisons of value added to attainment. So you see these scatter plots. So value added may be calculated for small groups, but as with any small data set, we would urge caution for that. There's no such thing as student level value added report, but that's okay because again, this measure is more suited to evaluation at a classroom or system level, like grade, program, or school. So finally, let's talk about the simplest approach to measuring growth, the gain model. This is basically a simple change in score over time. So this model does not take into account any prior performance or student characteristics, but it can be helpful for people looking to understand how performance has changed from year to year. So we have a tool that provides this information about one-year growth. It's called the Multidimensional Analytic Tool. It really rolls off the tongue. We call it MDAT. So for MDAT, I'm actually going to go back to Secure Home and select MDAT. Now this tool includes many filter options and displays a report that shows average change in scale score for the selected one-year time frame for the group that you've selected. In MDAT, authorized users can also view a table showing change in scores for individual students. So let's take a look here. Once we select a district, where you can select different variables, and the tool sort of walks you through that selection process. So we have to select at least 2 variables here. We'll pick reading and math as one, and grade level, because those have to be selected in some way or other. You could select grade level as a filter, and we'll just keep it very simple and stick with those. Although you can see we can filter by primary disability, race, ethnicity, FAY status, years enrolled in the school, a lot of options. And this is a very simple report just showing visually those average change in scores over the time frame selected, as I mentioned. And as I also mentioned, authorized users can drill in and actually look at the students in the group. They can look at those individual students' change in scores over time and see if they've actually changed performance levels or just their change in scale scores. So I hope that you found this discussion of different ways to measure growth informative, particularly as you see how these different measures can inform different but equally important conversations about performance at a student, program, educator, school, and district level. I would suggest a couple of next steps for the educators watching. If you haven't access to your students' growth percentile reports or your district's value-added reports or school's value-added reports, I encourage you to take the next step and review these important data. If you have already worked with growth reports and that's a part of your data discussion and decision making, that's fantastic. Please consider how to deepen this practice by using growth data in setting and evaluating SLOs, which my colleague Mark will talk about shortly. to plan and evaluate instructional interventions, to draft school and district improvement plans. And these are just a few ways that you can think about incorporating growth into your data use. Again, thanks for watching and have a great day.